Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto is trained by Master Yoda. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. It was the Valley of the End, a place where two godlike ninjas had once fought: Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. Now standing on either statue of the two legendary ninjas were two genin powering up their most powerful attacks. Standing on the statue of Madara Uchiha was Sasuke Uchiha, who was in the level 2 curse mode and was currently charging up his Chidori. Opposite to Sasuke was our blonde hero Naruto, who was in his one-tail mode due to the 9-tailed fox sealed inside of him when he was a baby. Naruto stared at his rival with determination in his eyes as he charged up a Rasengan in his right hand. Once both were done charging their respective techniques, they lunged at each other, saying the name of their attacks: Chidori, Rasengan. As their attacks clashed, a dark circle began to envelope them. Both of them, not caring about what occurring around them, just struggled to beat the other in this final move. It was only when they became encircled by the strange energy did one of the techniques win out. "Ah!" yelled Sasuke out in pain as he was sent hurling away from the strange energy that was now glowing and destroying the landscape around it before it finally stopped and in a bright light vanished with our hero still inside of it. Setting Naruto's mindscape, Naruto suddenly found himself in front of the cage that contained the Kyuubi, but for some reason there was a man standing in front of it as well. Curious as to who he was and how he got in here, Naruto made his way over. "Hey, who are you and how are you in here with me?" Naruto asked when he was close enough to the man. When the man turns around to face Naruto, he noticed that the man looked like an older version of himself, just without the whisker marks on his cheeks. Naruto was even more surprised when he remembered the man's face on the Hokage mountain as the fourth Hokage. "Son, I am sorry for all the pain that I put you through by making you the Jinchuriki of the 9 tails." The fourth said as he looked at his son with the most sincere look on his face, showing that he was truly sorry for what he had done. Naruto was about to pass out as he just mumbled out why the fourth Hokage was calling him son. To which the Hokage just smiled. "I'm calling you my son because you are my son. The son of the fourth Hokage Minato Namikaze, and I couldn't be prouder to say that, as I have been watching your life and I've watched you endure much more than anyone should have to endure, but yet you were able to become the fine young man before me," Minato said as he put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. After Naruto shed a few tears, he finally decided that it was time to stop and find out what was going on, as the fox should have said something by now. "Dad, while it's great to see you, why are you here now and where is the fox?" Naruto asked his father as he was clearly confused as to what was going on. Hearing Naruto's question, he got a sad look in his eyes as he looked at his son straight in the eyes. "I'm sorry son, but you're going to die soon. That's why Kyuubi isn't here, because he escaped when the seal got weak, and I'm here because I put a part of my chakra inside the seal so I could save you if the Kyuubi ever tried to take over your body by rebuilding the seal." "So what happens to me now?" Naruto asked in a voice that showed he was desperately trying to keep calm about this whole matter. "I'm not sure son, I have to go back with the death god now, but whatever happens, know that your mother and I love you," Minato said as a tear fell down his cheek and he began to fade away. Once Minato was gone, Naruto stood in the middle of the room with a smile on his face when suddenly he began to scream in pain and everything went black. Setting Star Wars universe in Naboo's palace. The newly elected Queen Padme Amidala was taking a walk through a hallway wearing what looked like very elegant blue dress. It was when she was walking through the hall that she saw a ball of light energy appear and destroy some of the area around it. Yelling for help, Padme took a step back as she heard the noise of her bodyguards getting closer. Before the bodyguards arrived, Padme watched as she made out a figure inside the ball of light that looked like a boy. She then became even more surprised as it looked like the light energy was entering into the boy. When it was all inside the boy, he fell to the ground in a crater that the energy had created. Seeing that he was hurt, Padme rushed over to boy, who she could now see had blonde hair. Once she had reached him, she rested his head in her lap as he began to slowly regain consciousness. Naruto thought that the world was spiraling around him and that he was experiencing the worst pain in his life, but one thing he knew for certain was when he opened his eyes he saw the most beautiful woman in the world. As he continued to look at her in wonder, he noticed that she was currently yelling at someone, but he couldn't hear her, probably because "I'm in so much pain, aw damn, it hurts to even try to move," Naruto thought as he was now struggling to keep conscious. Feeling the boy in her lap start to move, she turned away from her bodyguard, who she yelled at to get help immediate, to see his blue eyes staring up at her. Seeing how intently he was looking at her, she had to fight down a blush that was appearing on her face. "I'm Padme Amidala. Who are you?" she asked him. Naruto came out of his trance of staring at her just in time to hear her say what her name was and was able to say one thing before passing out. "Naruto." Later at Med Bay, "Is he going to be alright?" Padme asked with a surprising amount of worry in her voice. "Why am I so worried about him? I just met him." "Okay, relax Padme, just relax. Before anything else we need to find out how he got there and why," thought the queen as she looked over to the doctor. "How is he? Will he be alright?" Padme asked him, to which the doctor just smiles. "Yes, he will be quite alright. In fact, his injuries are healing faster than I've ever seen before on anyone, my queen," replied the doctor as he looked back at Naruto, who appeared to recovering from severe exhaustion now. "In fact, he should be able to leave by tomorrow at the earliest," he said later doctor as he looked back Padme, who seemed relieved that the boy she had just met was going to live. "Very well, when he is better please send him to my throne room. I would like to speak with him," she said, and then left the room. Next day noon, Naruto had just opened his eyes when he was blinded by the white light. "Maybe I'm in heaven and that girl I saw earlier was an angel," Naruto thought to himself as his eyes adjusted to the light. As he looked around, he saw what at first thought looked like some type of doctor. "Hello there sir, I have been your doctor for the time you were hospitalized, and I was told that when you woke that you must meet the queen in her throne room," the doctor said in happy voice that another one of his patients had recovered wonderfully. "I see, but where are my clothes if you don't mind me asking?" Naruto said as he stretched out his muscles. "Ah, about your clothes. You see, the thing is they were pretty destroyed, so we threw them away," the doctor replied in a casual tone. "What? So what am I supposed to wear then?" Naruto yelled in shock. "Don't worry sir, while you were asleep I picked out some clothes that would fit you," said the doctor as he pointed to a set of clothes on a chair and chuckled, finding the boy's reaction quite funny to him. Few minutes later, after a few minutes, Naruto came out of the bathroom wearing the new clothes, and all in all he was happy with them even if they had no orange. But what really made him smile was that when he put his hand in his pocket he felt his headband that he had gotten from Iruka. Thanking the doctor for not throwing it away, the doctor simply replied that it was the one thing that was not destroyed and that it seemed special to the boy. Not knowing where he was, Naruto decided to tie it around his right bicep since he figured that he was going to be starting a new life but still wanted something to remind him of his old life. Turning toward to the doctor, he asked where and who the queen was. To which the man simply answered that the queen's throne room was on the highest floor and that the queen was the one to find and save him. As Naruto made his way up to the top floor, he was very nervous since the person who he had just thought was an angel was actually a queen, and that meant that she had to be very important and that he would have to repay her for saving him. When he entered the throne room, there were several guards in the room holding strange weapons that Naruto had no idea what they did. He made his way up to the woman in the chair, who he presumed was the queen, but something felt strange to him. "Hello, I am Queen Amidala and I would like to know who you are since you did come out of nowhere," she started, but that was as far as she got as Naruto felt that he needed to intervene. "I'm sorry to cut in and I don't mean to sound threatening, it's just that I was told that I was saved by the queen herself and I can tell you're not the queen," Naruto stated, and as he looked around he saw everyone in the room visibly tensed until one of the handmaidens stood up to speak. "I am Queen Padme Amidala. I apologize for the deception, but I hope that you will be honest with us since we are as well," she said as she stood in front of him without any fear that he would threaten her. Naruto smiled at her and thanked her for being honest with him when he started his life story and how he got here, except of course he left out the part of what he thought when he first saw her. When he was done, Padme was the first to ask him for a demonstration of his skills, to which Naruto agreed to, but as he did what he always did when he used chakra, something felt different to him, as if it was something else completely. Setting Naboo Palace. Naruto was standing inside the courtroom as he tried what he always did when he drew in his chakra, but something about it felt different. Deciding to just go with the flow, he gathered the energy to his feet and ran toward the nearest wall. When he reached the wall, he ran up it to the surprise of everyone all the way to ceiling above their heads. When he reached the ceiling, Naruto jumped down and made his favorite hand seal while whispering, "Shadow Clone Jutsu." When only one clone appeared, he looked at it with only a small hint of confusion as he put enough energy into the jutsu that the whole room should have been filled with clones. Another thing was how it appeared, whereas they usually appeared in puffs of smoke, this clone just seemed to appear out of nowhere. No poof. It was just there. Figuring that he had one more thing to showcase, Naruto with the help of his clone began forming a Rasengan in his right hand. Once it was finished, Naruto noticed that he felt much more tired than he should have been as he began to pant sprightly. Still wanting to show the destructibility of the Rasengan, he asked one of the guards to please lower the metal door to the throne room. "Why would I do that? I hope you don't intend to hit it with that little ball." He laughed as he pointed to the Rasengan in Naruto's hand. "This door is what is used in emergencies to protect the queen." He would have gone on had not Padme interrupted him. "You heard me say that I wanted to see all of his skills. If he thinks that he can break through the door, then I say let him try. If he can do it, then we will have to build a new one, but if he can't, then no harm done," she said as she glared at him in a way that said, "Do as I say now." "Yes, my queen," was all the guard said as he closed the door. Once the door was closed, Naruto snapped out of his momentary shock that the queen was defending him. "I wonder why she defended me if I am a stranger," thought Naruto before he ran straight at the door and only stopped when he extended his arm and the Rasengan into the metal door. "Rasengan!" Naruto yelled as his Rasengan for a second clashed with the door until there was an explosion that covered the area in small debris from where Naruto was. Padme, who was watching on the sidelines, felt immediate worry for the child when explosion happened, but before she could try to help, she found that her guards had surrounded her in an effort to protect her. "I'm fine, can't they see that? They should be trying to help Naruto, he could be hurt. Wait, why am I so worried for him? Must be because he's my age. Yeah, that's it and nothing else." Padme thought as she waited anxiously as the dust settled, only to see Naruto standing in front of a hole in the door completely fine, but besides that there seemed to be small crater in the ground from the impact of his attack. Needless to say, Naruto was still happy that the Rasengan did its job, but just like with the shadow clones, he noticed that he was much more tired than he should be after using only one Rasengan. As he looked around, he saw that Padme and her guards were on the other side of the room, which made him scratch the back of his head. "Sorry for the mess," Naruto said with a nervous laugh. He got even more nervous as Padme made her way toward him with a serious look on her face. As Padme made her way up to him, she had to keep up her formal appearance, but on the inside she was absolutely excited and curious at the fact that someone so strong just came up at her doorstep, but now the problem was how could she make him stay? Aha! All she had to do was make him a proposition. "So Naruto, now that I know what were you telling us is true, I would like to ask you something. Would you like to be my personal bodyguard?" Padme asked as she looked at Naruto straight in the eyes. When Naruto heard Padme's question, there was no hesitation. "I would love to protect the woman who saved my life, my queen." Padme was delighted to hear this, and so she got right to work telling him where he would live, which would be under her room in her place, so he could always be near her just in case something were to happen. So for the rest of the day, Naruto was setting up his new room, which was Padme's guest room. It was when Naruto was all set up that he took a moment to collect his thoughts. "I've only been awake a day and I already have a job to protect the most important person here. On top of that, when I look at her, I get this weird feeling in my stomach. Maybe I should try that thing Iruka taught me in the academy. What was it, Aga?" and Naruto thought as he scratched the back of his head trying to remember. "Oh yeah, meditation. Now if I remember correctly, all I have to do is sit down and clear my mind," Naruto thought as he sat down on his bed in the cross-legged position and tried to relax. It took several minutes before Naruto finally got relaxed, and before he knew it, he was in a white room with a glowing orb of what seemed like energy in the middle of it. Curious as to what it was, Naruto tried to reach out to it, only for it to move away. Deciding that maybe it was better to slowly approach it, Naruto began to slowly move to it. With Padme upstairs. While Naruto was meditating, Padme was on the floor above him and was currently putting away her jewelry when she began having thoughts about her new bodyguard. "Wonder how he is adjusting to life here. Maybe I should go see him and ask him some questions," she thought as she looked toward the stairs, but then turned away quickly. "Of course, he does look like he can handle himself. In fact, I'm sure he will be fine in a few days. Who knows, maybe he will have a girlfriend soon," Padme thought, but clenched her hand into a fist at the last thought for some unknown reason. She then, just as fast as she had turned away from the stairs, turned back toward them and started walking down them at a brisk pace. "I'm just going to check on him to make sure he's okay," she thought to herself as she got closer to his room. Meanwhile, with Naruto, he had abandoned the approach of going slowly and was now trying to catch the glowing orb of energy with all the speed he could muster until he finally jumped and caught it with two hands. As soon as he caught it, Naruto noticed that the orb felt warm for some reason and then it broke and disappeared, confusing the hell out of Naruto as to what it was. Oh well, I'll find out later, might as well as get back to reality, Naruto said to himself. 1 minute before, Padme walked into Naruto's room, and to say that she was shocked was the understatement of the century. Naruto was sitting on his bed, which would have been normal enough had that bed not been floating above the floor a few inches. In an effort to wake him up, Padme jumped on the bed with him and shook his shoulders, and at the same time calling his name, when suddenly the bed decided to take this moment to fall back down, making her kiss him on the lips. Seeing what she was doing, Padme quickly pulled away and got off the bed before Naruto woke up. That did not just happen. Please let Naruto not have noticed, Padme thought as Naruto a few seconds later opened his eyes to see Padme standing in front of him. Not understanding why, but Naruto for some reason didn't feel tired and felt happy for some reason. "Hello my queen," Naruto said as he smiled at her and looked at her with eyes that to Padme reminded her of a vast ocean. Hearing Naruto call her his queen, Padme had to quickly overcome a blush that had spread across her face and had to find her voice. "Naruto, we're by ourselves, there is no need for you to call me queen. Please call me Padme when we're alone," she asked. Hearing her ask this, Naruto nodded and asked why she was down here checking on him. "Well, I know you're new here, so I decided to check up on you to make sure you were okay," Padme said as she smiled at him, which made Naruto feel more at ease. "Don't worry about me, I'm fine, I just can't wait to get to work tomorrow," Naruto said excitedly, which made Padme chuckle at his antics before leaving and both of them saying good night to each other. 10 months later. It had been a long day for Padme as she got back to the house with Naruto, who had been uncharacteristically quiet and was hanging out with that astromech droid R2-D2 a lot of the day. But her breath was taken away when the door opened and she saw Naruto with R2-D2 standing in the room that held a banner that said, "Happy Birthday Padme." As Padme read this, she started to have tears fall down her face as she ran over to Naruto and tackled him with a fierce hug. "Thank you Naruto so much," Padme whispered softly, and only then did she realize that the Naruto she had walked home with had actually been a shadow clone that had now disappeared. "Well, I can't take all the credit, Padme, after all R2 helped a lot," Naruto said as he helped her up, and the dome-shaped droid made beeps that sounded like a, "You're welcome," as it twirled around and made its way over to Padme's side, who could only laugh at the little droid's antics and smile as she got down to the droid's height. "Thank you R2, I know Naruto couldn't have done without you," she said as Naruto mock glared at her. "I could have done it by myself," Naruto said in a childish tone, which in turn only made Padme laugh. "Oh Naruto, don't pout." "I'm not pouting," Naruto said as he crossed his arms. "Now come on, let's eat, I made your favorite food," Naruto said again as he grabbed Padme's hand and led her to a table filled with her favorite food. "You know Naruto," Padme said as she sat it down, "you didn't have to do this all by yourself. I know, it's just that Padme, since I've arrived you've been so nice to me. So I wanted to do something for you," Naruto said as he sat down across from her. Hearing this, Padme became confused. "But Naruto, you don't need to repay me, you already protect me with your life as my personal bodyguard," Padme said as she took a drink while she listened to what Naruto had to say. "Well, you see, that's different Padme, that's for me, I consider you one of my precious people, so I would gladly risk my life to save yours," Naruto said with a fierce amount of determination in his voice and fire in his eyes. They then continued to have a wonderful dinner and said good night to each other, but for Padme it was harder to fall asleep because as she looked up at the ceiling only one thought was on her mind after the wonderful night she had just had. "I think I'm in love with Naruto," Padme whispered to herself quietly. Setting Palace of Naboo 2 months later, after the end of Chapter 2. It had been a long week as the Trade Federation had decided to make a blockade over the small planet of Naboo. Padme was currently telling Viceroy Newt Gunray, one of the Nemodians in charge of the Trade Federation, that they had gone too far this time in blockading Naboo. Padme then ended the transmission and turned on a link that was connected to Senator Palpatine. Padme had just finished telling the senator that no ambassadors had arrived when the hologram of Senator Palpatine suddenly began to disappear until it went out completely. Naruto, who was to the side, was listening in on the conversation when he heard someone suggest that the Trade Federation was going to invade, which Naruto thought was very possible but was brought out of his thoughts when he heard Padme's voice. "We must continue to rely on negotiation." Padme said firmly, but the others were still worried about an invasion, so when she spoke again she used all the authority in her voice that she could. I will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war. Hoping to put forward his own 2 cents, Naruto stepped next to Padme's chair. Right now, if the Trade Federation were to make any move, they would be in the wrong. I say at least for now trust in the ambassadors who were sent to handle the negotiations, Naruto said, and then looked back at Padme, who gave him a small smile showing that she was thankful for him backing her up. A few minutes later and the meeting was ended so that they could talk more later once they heard how the negotiations went. Padme took this time as an opportunity to relax and talk to Naruto about the feelings that she had started developing for him ever since that night they had dinner, since he was not far and was just standing looking at a painting on the wall that showed the vast plains that Naboo had with its clear blue sky. Only a few steps away from Naruto, Padme felt as though she could feel her heartbeat go faster as she got closer to Naruto. She was only a few steps away when Padme heard Naruto's voice right behind her. "So what are you doing, Padme?" The voice said causally. But that was all Padme needed to be startled as she quickly turned around and punched the shadow clone straight in the face. Seeing the shadow clone disappear, Padme turned back to the real Naruto, who, though she couldn't see it, knew that Naruto was smiling. "You know, for a queen you sure punch hard," Naruto said as he had received the memories of said punched clone and turned away from the painting to see what Padme wanted. Unfortunately for Naruto, though, Padme was not in a good mood. "I come over here to tell him my feelings and he has the nerve to try and scare me," Padme thought furiously as she moved closer to Naruto, who at this moment realized that he had done something wrong and was in deep shit. "Wait, Padme, don't do anything hasty," Naruto frantically said as he slowly moved away from the ticked-off queen while trying to find a way out of this situation as fast as possible. Unfortunately for Naruto, his mercy came from the sound of Federation droids marching through the main street of the city, which caused both Naruto and Padme to rush to the nearest window where they could see what was happening. Though what they saw is the same, they both reacted differently to what looked like an invasion force taking over. When Padme looked out the window and looked at the droids covering the city of that she loved, she became very depressed that she couldn't stop this and only hoped that her people would be safe. Naruto, on the other hand, when he saw this and was ready to take action as he put his hands up, was about to yell out his favorite technique but only got as far as "Shad," because when Padme saw what he was going to do, she pushed his hands apart and then covered his mouth with one of her hands. "Naruto, please don't do it. I know you're strong, but there's too many of them and innocent people could get hurt," Padme pleaded with our blonde hero. Wanting to speak, Naruto used one of his hands and gently lowered Padme's hand from his mouth. "Padme, I'm stronger now. I've been training this whole entire past year. I finally have my strength back," Naruto said happily as he looked into her eyes but only saw worry in them. "I don't care," Padme said as she grabbed him into a tight hug. "I can't bear the thought of you fighting a whole army only by yourself, no matter how strong you are. You will die," Padme practically yelled the last part in hopes of changing his mind. But her pleas fell on deaf ears as Naruto looked at her. "Padme, ever since I've arrived here you've been my most precious person, and as one of my precious people I have to protect you, especially you, no matter what, even if it kills me," Naruto said softly, though it was laced with determination and the will of fire. Hearing him say this, Padme didn't know what to think. On one hand she was happy that she was so important to him, but on the other hand she was sad since it seemed as though Naruto was dead set on protecting her even if it killed him. "Fine, if you're going to protect me then please do it my way. Wait until they think they have captured me and then you can free me and we can escape," Padme said, but more like begged him, and could only shed a few tears of joy as Naruto gave a gentle nod of his head showing that he would go along with her plan despite not liking the idea of letting her get captured. Before leaving to think of a plan of escape, Naruto turned back to look at Padme. "Sorry for making you worry about me," Naruto whispered before sprinting down the hallway and out of sight. As Padme left to go change and inform the others that they would be arrested soon, Naruto went to go find R2 and get ready for the evacuation plan, which would basically be, at least the way Naruto thought, first step save Padme, second get ship, and last step, assuming we are still alive, is getting the fuck off Naboo. Sometime later outside, the queen and those that were in the throne room with her were being escorted by multiple droids, but what they didn't know was that 2 Jedi were on the bridge above them getting ready to ambush the droids surrounding them. "Master," said the younger of the two, "I sense a presence that seems incredibly strong in the Force." Yes, I sense it as well, Obi-Wan, but I do not sense any ill intent, so for now we must discover who the person is and figure out if they are here to hinder or help us," said the older of the two as both Jedi grabbed their lightsabers ready to jump and attack the droids once they got close enough. Before they jumped down, a figure leapt down and slammed a ball made up of force energy into a droid. From what the two Jedi could tell, it looked as though the person who they could now see was blonde was trying to free the Queen as he made his way to take out the next nearest droid with the ball of force and was not disappointed as it completely ripped through the droid. Once it was destroyed, a copy of the blonde came out of nowhere, but the Jedi could feel that it was made up of the force as it appeared right next to the original and grabbed the guns from the fallen droids and threw them to two guards in the group, hoping to give them something to defend themselves with. Figuring that it was time that they made their presence known, the two Jedi jumped down and ignited their lightsabers to cut down the remaining droids that surrounded the Queen. Once the droids were taken care of, they left the streets listening to the Master Jedi's instruction when he informed them that they were the ambassadors and that the negotiations never took place. "It's urgent that we make contact with the Republic. Do you have any form of transport?" he asked. It was Naruto who answered his question. "It's in the main hangar this way," Naruto said as he led the way to the main hangar. At the main hangar, they had stopped right outside the door when the Jedi Knight turned to face the Queen. "Under these circumstances, I would suggest that you return to Coruscant with us. They will kill you if you stay," he said, to put more emphasis on the need to leave now. "I agree with the Jedi," Naruto said, making the Queen look towards him along with her handmaidens. "If you stay and refuse to sign that treaty they were talking about, then they will kill you and find someone else to take the throne who will sign it." "Oh, sorry Jedi, my name is Naruto, I am the personal guard of the Queen," Naruto said the last part to the Jedi as he bowed his head slightly toward him. "Your bodyguard is right, Your Highness, my feelings tell me they will destroy you," the Jedi said to the Queen, and then turned toward Naruto. "My name is Qui-Gon Jinn and my Padawan is Obi-Wan Kenobi," who simply smiled and greeted Naruto by saying, "Hello there." While the Jedi were introducing themselves to Naruto, the Queen turned to her handmaidens, who said that they were brave. "Very well then, let us go so that I can plead our case to the Senate," the Queen said, gaining everyone's attention. Hearing this, they walked into the hangar, and while the Jedi distracted the droids guarding the pilots and the ship, the others were getting inside the large chrome ship. It was all looking good until the droid in charge made the mistake of trying to arrest Qui-Gon, who unleashed his lightsaber and cut through all of the droids in front of him. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan covered the pilots, who quickly ran to get to the ship. Once everyone was inside, they took off and left the planet of Naboo, only to be confronted by the Trade Federation blockade, which was doing some damage to the ship. Naruto, who had made his way to the cockpit of the ship just in time as they were sending the astromech droids to repair the ship's shield generator. Naruto was forced to watch as one by one the astromech droids were shot off the edge of the ship until he could only see R2. "Come on R2, I know you've got this," Naruto thought as R2-D2 finished repairing the ship's shields, which were powered back up to maximum, and then made his way safely back inside the ship. Back inside the cockpit, the pilot was informing everyone that they didn't have enough power to make it to Coruscant and that the hyperdrive was leaking. Obi-Wan, who was looking for a planet close enough to land, called over his master and pointed to an image of a planet called Tatooine. "Here, master. Tatooine. It's out of the way, poor, and the Trade Federation has no presence there." Last time on Naruto of the Jedi Order, they had just discovered that they wouldn't make it to Coruscant, so it was up to Obi-Wan Kenobi to find a planet close enough to land when he called over his master and pointed to Tatooine. "Here, master. Tatooine. It's out of the way, poor, and the Trade Federation have no presence there." And now in some big-ass white room inside the ship. It was at this time that Captain Panaka had congratulated R2-D2 for saving the ship in front of the Queen. Seeing that droid was dirty, she turned to one of her handmaidens. "Padme, clean this droid up as best as you can, it deserves our gratitude," she said to Padme, who nodded and left the room with R2 following right behind her. "Now what is our next course of action?" the Queen said as she looked at Qui-Gon. "Your Highness, with your permission, we're heading for a remote planet called Tatooine. It's a system far beyond the reach of the Trade Federation," Qui-Gon said as he took a step forward. The idea, though, was opposed by Captain Panaka. "I do not agree with the Jedi on this," he noted, making his opinion clear to the Queen. Seeing that an argument could break out between the two, Naruto decided to intervene. Your Highness, I believe that we should trust Master Ki-Gon's judgment on this since our options are limited and this option seems like the best one. Naruto said behind the two Jedi in the back, making his presence known to the others in the room. Very well, it is settled. We will land on Tatooine to repair the ship and then make our way to Coruscant, the Queen said, settling the matter before Captain Panaka could say any more. As they began to leave the room, Naruto was stopped at the doorway. The Jedi Master, Naruto, I would like to talk to you if you have a moment. Naruto at first hesitated when he heard Ki-Gon call him over as he was going to check on how Padme and R2 were doing, but then decided that he had time and might as well as talk to the Jedi. Yes, of course, Master Ki-Gon, what is it that you need? Naruto asked as turned around. When we land, I would like for you to go with me so we can talk more privately. Don't worry, I'm leaving my Padawan on the ship so no harm will come to the Queen. Ki-Gon said when he was close enough to Naruto. Why can't you just talk to me now? Naruto asked. Because it is about your future and I would rather talk to you about it privately. Ki-Gon said before walking away, leaving a confused Naruto who decided that he should go check on Padme. I wonder what he was talking about, Naruto thought as he entered the room where Padme was currently cleaning up R2. R2 seems to be happy that you're cleaning him, Naruto said in the doorway, which caused R2 to beep and whistle happily at seeing his friend while Padme just smiled at him. Yeah, if only someone would help me clean him, Padme said as she motioned to an extra rag sitting on a box to which to clean R2. Smiling, Naruto grabbed the small towel and began cleaning R2, and for a while Naruto and Padme sat there in silence enjoying each other's company as they cleaned R2 until the door opened to reveal a Gungan's head poking through the doorway. Who are you, sir? Mesa Jar Jar Binks. It was Padme who answered for the both of them. I'm Padme and this is Naruto. You're a Gungan, aren't you? How did you get all the way out here with us? She asked Jar Jar. Mesa doesn't know. Mesa Day was startin' pity oki day den bam. Mesa gettin' very scared and grabbin' Dad Jedi, and pow Mesa here. Jar Jar said as he paced all over the room as he spoke to them before leaving, saying that he forgot something in the other room. Once gone, R2 beeped something out. He sounds like a bitch. This caused Naruto to laugh and even Padme to stifle a laugh, not expecting R2 to say something like that so suddenly. Once Padme controlled herself, she turned to Naruto. So what are you going to do while we're on Tatooine? Padme asked as they were finishing up cleaning up R2. I'm not sure. Ki-Gon said he wanted me to come down with him when we landed to talk about my future. Naruto said, still wondering what the Jedi could want with him. Padme was shocked by this and asked the first thing that came to mind, are you okay? Does he know you're not from here? I don't know, Naruto answered truthfully. But what I do know is that whatever it is, it's probably important, Naruto said as he glanced at Padme and then looked at the floor in deep thought about what it could be. Padme, seeing how deep in thought he was, grabbed his hand with hers. Hey, it'll be okay, and whatever it is you'll tell me so we can talk about it, right? Padme asked as she looked at Naruto, who smiled and turned back towards her. Yeah, without a doubt, Naruto answered her, making Padme return the smile. Couple of minutes later, the ship had landed on the outskirts of a settlement on Tatooine to avoid attention and was currently powering down as Naruto and the freshly cleaned R2 met up with Ki-Gon and Jar Jar outside the ship. Glad that you could join us, Naruto. Ki-Gon said as he saw Naruto walk out wearing what looked to be clothes for a very poor person. Yeah, well, I was curious as to what you wanted to tell me about my future, you know, Naruto said as he walked alongside Ki-Gon to the settlement they had seen earlier from the ship. They hadn't gotten very far from the ship when they heard Captain Panaka yell at them, getting their attention. Wait. He yelled as he walked over to them with Padme by his side. Her Highness commands you to take her loyal handmaiden with you. No more commands from Her Highness today, Captain. The spaceport is not going to be pleasant, Ki-Gon said, not wanting to bring anyone else along with him on his trip. But Captain Panaka was persistent in his efforts. The Queen wishes, she is curious about the planet. Sighing, Ki-Gon decided it was best to give in to avoid wasting time. Fine, stay close to me, he told Padme, who followed him and the rest to the spaceport. As they drew nearer to the spaceport, it was Ki-Gon who broke the silence. The few spaceports like this one are havens for those that don't wish to be found. Like us, Padme said as she looked at the ground when she felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see that it was Naruto, who gave her a comforting smile. Yes, that may be true, but it won't be like that for long. You will get back to Naboo, I promise, Naruto whispered to Padme when he walked next to her. Once inside the spaceport, they decided to try one of the smaller traders in hope for getting better deal, and it wasn't long before they found one. Once inside, Ki-gon talked with the merchant who went with him outside to talk about the parts they would need to for the ship. When they were outside, a little boy walked inside and jumped on the counter. Wondering as to who he was, Naruto walked over to him. "Who are you?" Naruto asked the boy. "My name is Anakin, don't worry, I was sent to watch over the store by Watto while he talks to your friend," the boy said as he looked at the Gungan who was messing around with a little droid. "Hit it in the nose." He told the Gungan, who did as he said and watched as the droid closed itself and powered off. "So do you work for Watto?" Padme asked as she overheard their conversation from where she was looking at random droid parts. "Sort of, my mom and I were lost by a Hutt who bet us on one of the pod races," said Anakin as he looked at Padme with eyes that made Naruto feel weird in his chest, but he pushed the feeling aside since he figured that the little boy just wasn't used to seeing strangers. "You're a slave?" Padme asked Anakin in a low voice with a sad look on her face. "I'm a person, and my name is Anakin," the boy said with an angry look on his face at being called a slave. But before Padme could correct her mistake, Naruto helped her out. "We're sorry, Anakin, it's just we're not from here and this place is still a little strange to us. It's fine, I guess I wouldn't even have lasted so long anyways if I wasn't so good at building things," the young child said as he watched Jar Jar juggle multiple objects until he tripped and all of the objects fell on him. It was at this moment that Ki-gon came back inside and stepped over Jar Jar's body that was now on the floor. "We're leaving now," Ki-gon said. "Did it go bad?" Naruto asked, already knowing the answer. "You could say that," Ki-gon said once they were all outside. Once outside, they continued making their way down the street, but it wasn't even a couple of minutes later when Jar Jar got himself into trouble with a merchant selling food who said that Jar Jar couldn't eat the food without paying for it. Not wanting to have to pay for it, Jar Jar quickly spat it out, but it landed into a Doug's bowl of food. Trying to act innocent, Jar Jar started whistling as he walked away but didn't make it far as he was tackled by the Doug who was now strangling him. Seeing that he needed help, Naruto was the first to arrive. "I suggest you get off my friend here," Naruto said in a threatening tone as a clone appeared next to him and began making a Rasengan in the original's hand. Last time on Naruto of the Jedi Order. Seeing that he needed help, Naruto was the first to arrive. "I suggest you get off my friend here," Naruto said in a threatening tone as a clone appeared next to him and began making a Rasengan in the original's hand. "Or what, your illusions don't scare me, boy," the Doug said as his grip on Jar Jar's strengthened but was then sent sailing as Naruto slammed the condensed blue ball of force into his chest while yelling, "Rasengan," which startled a couple of the people passing by since the Doug was launched to the wall where he remained knocked out as his friends came over and picked up his unconscious body. "Jar Jar, you okay?" Naruto asked as he helped him up, to which Jar Jar just nodded his head as he rubbed his sore throat. It was at this time that Anakin decided to come over. "Your friends picked a fight with an extremely dangerously Doug, and how did you do that last thing?" Anakin asked, but before Naruto could answer, Naruto was interrupted by Ki-gon and Padme, who were calling them over to hurry up. Seeing that he and Jar Jar were getting left behind, he quickly turned back to Anakin. "Sorry kid, but that's a secret only I know," but Naruto said, but felt a little bad for the boy when he saw that he looked down. "If you want to come with us while we go to the market, you're welcome to join us," Naruto added as he turned back to the others with Jar Jar and Anakin following behind him. Once they had finished getting some food from the market, an old lady who had sold them something warned Anakin that there was a storm coming, which caused Anakin in turn to ask the others if they had any shelter from the storm. "Our ship should give us protection. It's on the outskirts," Ki-gon answered the boy, who could only shake his head when he heard what the Jedi said. "You'll never make it that far in time. Come with me to my house, it's not that far, so we'll be safe from the storm," Anakin said as he dragged them to his house. Setting Anakin's house. Once inside, they nearly gave Anakin's mother a heart attack, but once they told her who they were, she introduced herself as Anakin's mother, SHMI. SHMI then decided that if her son trusted them, then they could stay for a little bit. While SHMI was setting the table, Anakin had gone to show Padme the droid he was building, while Ki-gon had dragged Naruto outside so they could talk. "So what was so important that we need to talk about in private?" Naruto asked as he crossed his arms and looked at the sun beginning to set. "I wanted to talk to you about your use of the Force," Ki-gon said as he leaned against the wall. "What's the Force?" Naruto said, confused as to what the Jedi Master was talking about. I'm talking about the blue ball of force and the clone you made in your fight. Who taught you how to use the force? Ki-gon said, his voice growing a little more serious. He must be talking about the Rasengan and my shadow clone. Naruto thought to himself, well, I learned how to do it myself. Naruto lied, but while he was saying it he rationalized in his mind that he had learned the shadow clone by himself from a scroll, and as for the Rasengan, while Jiraiya did show him how to do it, he mostly left him to figure it out himself. When Ki-gon heard this, he struggled with something in his mind, because on one hand he felt a strong presence in the force from the little kid, but he also felt something within the teen in front of him who somehow managed to teach himself abilities in the force that Ki-gon had never heard of his whole entire time inside the Jedi Order. What are you thinking so hard about? Naruto asked the Jedi, who had just come out of his thoughts. I was thinking, how would you like to become a Jedi? Ki-gon asked Naruto, who really surprised by his question. I thought that you had to start at a young age to become a Jedi? Naruto replied. That's true, but you already seem to have a deep connection with the Force, you just need someone to teach you how to use it in the Jedi way. Ki-gon said as he used the Force bring his lightsaber off of his belt and into the palm of his hand. Here I'll demonstrate, you just saw how I used the Force. Now I want you to use the Force to grab my lightsaber. The Jedi said as he let lightsaber rest on the palm of his now open hand. Wanting to see if he could do it, Naruto closed his eyes and stretched out his hand to try and use the Force to pick up the lightsaber. Unbeknownst to Naruto, Ki-gon watched amazed as his lightsaber hovered over his palm due to Naruto manipulating the Force around it on his first try. Well done, Naruto, Ki-gon said, but it startled Naruto, causing him to unconsciously quickly bring the lightsaber in his hand, which then ignited due to Naruto pressing the button accidentally. Opening his eyes, Naruto marveled at the green lightsaber that was in his hands before his gaze moved over to Ki-gon, who looked amused at how Naruto was looking at his lightsaber, which made Naruto quickly turn the lightsaber off and hand it back to its owner with an embarrassed look on his face as he tried to apologize. Sorry, I did not mean to grab your lightsaber, it's just that you startled me and I pulled, making it come to my hand, making it turn on, and man, is that thing awesome. Again, so sorry. Naruto said, hoping that the Jedi wasn't angry with him, after all he had just taken his lightsaber without his permission. But to his surprise, Ki-gon was surprisingly calm about it. Relax, Naruto, I know it's not your fault, but you still haven't answered my question, would you like to become a Jedi? Ki-gon asked our young hero, who simply looked up at the sky for a couple of seconds before answering, could I have some time to think about it, after all it is an important decision? Naruto asked the Jedi, who simply nodded but said to give him his answer before they reached Coruscant, which Naruto said he would. They were then called down to eat dinner, where Anakin offered to race for them in the pod races with his mother's permission, of course. The next day they had repaired the pod racer to be ready for the race. And then the day later they were in the stands waiting for the race to start, while Ki-gon had gone to meet and make a deal to free Anakin. Before the race started, Ki-gon made his way to where the group was, and Padme made sure to make her opinion known to the Jedi. Are you sure this is a good idea? The Queen would not approve, she said, not wanting to put all of their chances of getting off this planet on a little boy. The Queen trusts my judgment. You should as well, Ki-gon replied before moving to the other side. Well, I don't approve, she said to herself, but Naruto heard and tried to hide his laughter, but to no avail, which made Padme turn around glaring at our young blonde. Shut up, she said as she punched him in the arm. What did I do? Naruto said, but got no answer as Padme was now paying her full attention to the race, which had been a close one, but Anakin had come out the victor. Once they had gotten their winnings, they returned to the ship with their new parts. After leaving the others at the ship, Ki-gon left to go back and get Anakin. Once inside the ship, Naruto said hello to Obi-Wan but was quickly pulled aside by Padme into a room and then locked the door. So what did he talk to you about? She asked Naruto anxiously, since she was curious about what a Jedi would want with Naruto. Taking a few seconds, Naruto figured out that she was talking about what Ki-gon talked to him about. Well, he asked me if I wanted to become a Jedi, Naruto said as he scratched the back of his head. Hearing this, Padme was so stunned that she felt as though the air had been taken away from her. If he goes, then I'll never be able to tell him how I feel, but if I stop him, then he could miss out on an amazing opportunity. Padme was struggling how to react, but Naruto could still see that when he told her the news she wasn't excited. Instead, she looked a little sad. Although I'm not sure if I'm going to talk, Naruto was saying, trying to cheer Padme up, but she cut him off. No, Naruto, you should go, it's an amazing opportunity. I don't want you to miss out. Padme said as she looked at the ground, not allowing herself to look at his eyes in fear of what she would do, but it didn't matter as Naruto put his hand on her shoulder. Padme, he said, please look at me. He pleaded but got no response. Deciding to say what he wanted to say anyways, he continued talking to her even if she wasn't going to look at him. Padme, you're acting as if you will never see me again. Even if I'm to become a Jedi, no matter what, I will still be there for you no matter what. You're my most precious person, don't you understand that yet? Naruto said as he grabbed her in a hug. But Jedi aren't allowed to love others. How can I stay your most precious person if you can't even love me? Padme cried into his chest. I guess just like when I was a ninja and I wanted to find my own ninja way, I'll have to find my own way. My Jedi way, Naruto declared with determination pouring off of him in waves that Padme looked up at him and actually believed he could do it. Fine, just don't forget about me, Padme said as she walked up to Naruto and kissed him on the cheek and then turned around and opened the door, then left. It would be hard to forget something like that, Naruto said to himself out loud as he made his way to the landing area so that he could look out at the desert. As he looked out, he saw Anakin running toward the ship and Qui-Gon fighting some strange person. Once he reached Qui-Gon's position, he created 5 shadow clones. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon had just been pushed away by the enemy he was fighting, who Naruto could now see had horns sticking out of his head and had red and black skin. Get the hell away from him, Naruto yelled as 2 of his shadow clones blitzed the enemy and the other 2 stayed back to create Rasengans in each of the original's hand. The man snarled and slashed one with his lightsaber, making it dispel, but the other in the meantime managed to get behind him and was about to land a punch to his head when it suddenly dispelled due to the dark figure igniting the other end of his lightsaber, which went right through the clone's chest. Don't get confident, bastard, because now I'll take care of you myself, Naruto yelled as he ran straight at him with his 2 remaining clones coming at him from both of his sides. Dealing with both clones first, he kicked the one on the right and used his lightsaber to swing at the clone's head on the left. Having to react fast to Naruto, who was by now right in front of him, he slashed diagonally with one side of the dual-wielded red saber, but it bounced off one of Naruto's Rasengan, forcing him to use the other side to slash horizontally. Ducking underneath the slash, Naruto slammed both Rasengans into his chest. Rasengan barrage. Naruto yelled as the man let go of his lightsaber due to the pain, allowing Naruto to get a closer look at his face before he was propelled away by the Rasengans into a rock farther away. Running to check up on Qui-Gon, Naruto ran in his direction, but to his surprise he was already up and fine by the looks of it. Come on Naruto, we must get onto the ship, Qui-Gon yelled as he ran in the direction of the now taking off ship. Luckily for them though, the landing door was still down, so when Naruto reached the ship all he had to do was concentrate the force into his legs and jump into the ship. Once inside, he turned around to where the dark figure landed and saw him getting up and grabbing his lightsaber. I'll let you off with a warning this time, don't mess with me. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto yelled as 100 clones appeared and began attacking the man, who had gone through about 30 before retreating on his cycle when he saw the rest begin to form Rasengans in their hands. Inside ship in space. What was that thing? Obi-Wan asked as he made sure his master was okay. I don't know, but whatever it was well trained, Qui-Gon replied, and then introduced Obi-Wan to Anakin. Whatever it was, it's gone for now, so we should hurry back to Coruscant. Oh, and Master Qui-Gon, I accept your offer, just tell me what I need to do, Naruto said as he looked at the Jedi Master. First we must all go to the council and see what they have to say about you and Anakin joining the Jedi Order, Qui-Gon said, knowing what the council would probably think about this. Master, are you sure about this? Obi-Wan said, snapping his master out of his thoughts. Yes, I am, and only time will tell if I'm making the right decision, Qui-Gon said as put a hand on his Padawans to calm his nerves. Alright, well, in the meantime then I'm probably gonna go get some shut-eye. Wake me up when we land, will you? Naruto said as walked through the door with his hands behind his head and yawning loudly enough for the others to hear. Naruto was in a deep sleep as he rested on his bunk, but if you were to take a closer look then you would notice that Naruto was gripping his pillow tightly and that he was drenched in sweat from the intense dream he was having, a rather nightmare setting Naruto's dream. Naruto found himself in a dense forest that seemed to remind him of the forest that surrounded the Leaf Village, the place he once called home. Everything was peaceful until Naruto heard a crackling and turned around to see a huge forest fire coming his way. Running through the forest to get away, Naruto's only thought was of why this was happening when he suddenly had to stop because of a drop right in front of him that he almost fell down. Looking back, he saw the fire spreading faster as if it knew that he had stopped running. Figuring there was no other way, Naruto gathered energy into his legs, leapt to the other side, but only made it due to catching the edge with his hands. Once he pulled himself up, Naruto rolled over on his back, closing his eyes while panting, trying to figure out where the hell he was. When Naruto opened his eyes, though, he found himself on his bed in the guest room of Padme's house on Naboo. Not knowing what the fuck was going on, Naruto quickly ran upstairs. "Padme!" Naruto yelled as he made his way upstairs, but what he saw made his blood run cold, because there in front of him was a figure shrouded in darkness holding a red lightsaber that was currently halfway through Padme, who was floating in the air as if she was being held up by nothing. Naruto couldn't believe what he was seeing as Padme's body was thrown by the dark figure over to his feet. Not knowing what to do, Naruto simply dropped to the floor and ran his hand down her cheek. As he did this, he looked at the hole where the lightsaber had killed her and then at her still open eyes before closing them. "Why?" Naruto said quietly at first before he raised his voice. "Why did you do this?" Naruto demanded as he looked back up at the figure that was still shrouded in darkness, but Naruto could now make out his yellow eyes that held nothing but hate. "Because you never deserved to even know her, and you were too weak to help the one person most precious to you. You're pathetic," the voice replied as he turned his lightsaber off and seemed to fade away, leaving Naruto to hold Padme's lifeless body in his arms as he dwelled on what the dark figure said to him. "Do I really not deserve to even know her? Am I too weak and pathetic?" Naruto wondered before the same orb of light that he had seen the first time he had meditated appeared out of nowhere. "No," said a voice that sounded like his surrogate grandfather, the third Hokage. Naruto was now looking at the golden orb in shock as it transformed and took the form of the third. "Grandpa, is that you?" Naruto asked. Unfortunately, though, it shook its head. No, I simply took the form of the one that meant a lot to you. I am here to tell you that you are not weak, nor are you pathetic. There is a reason why I choose you, and it's because out of all the others there's something different about you, something special. You have the ability to overcome any obstacle placed in your way with what was given to you by the man I am in front of you. Do you know what that is?" The copy of the third Hokage asked Naruto, who simply continued to look down at the ground. "Grandpa gave me the will of fire and showed me that what it means to never give up," Naruto said with confidence as he stood up and Padme's body seemed to disappear into nothing. The room began to disappear next, but Naruto continued, "I will not allow this to become true. I will find a way to stop who did this, and I will find out who he is," Naruto said, causing the copy of the third to smile, seeing that Naruto had regained his usual determination to never give up. "While it is great that you are back to your normal self, you will not have so much time. In 10 years' time events will begin to unfold which will lead to what you saw, and to stop them you cannot do so yourself. During those 10 years Padme will be safe, but to save her from her death you must let her go so that you can become stronger in the Force," the copy of the third said, and then began to glow and transform back into the golden orb. "If it's for her safety, then I must become stronger, and I know the way to do that. I must become a Jedi," Naruto said as he watched the orb break into pieces like the first time he encountered it. Real world. Waking up with a start, Naruto could feel that the plane was landing, so he did a few stretches and made his way to where the others probably were. At the landing area, Senator Palpatine was there waiting for the Queen. Naruto was about to follow Padme but was called over by Qui-Gon, who was standing on the other side with Obi-Wan and Anakin. "We are going to meet with the council right now, Naruto. You should come," the Jedi Knight said. "Yeah, sure, let's go," Naruto said as he went with them and climbed into a speeder that would take them to the Jedi Temple. Jedi Council Room. Qui-Gon was currently standing there with his Padawan, since he told both Naruto and Anakin to wait outside until he called them in for their test. "More you have to tell us, Qui-Gon?" the wise Jedi Master known as Yoda said when he noticed that Qui-Gon had not moved from his position even though he had already given his report on the assignment. "I have encountered divergences in the Force, Master," Qui-Gon said as he looked around at the council. "And these divergences, what are they around? A single person?" Master Mace Windu asked as he sat up in his chair. "Actually, it is around two. I can feel that the Force is extremely strong in each of them. I would like to train one of them, and I would like to ask that one of you trains the other. He already has a certain level of mastery over the Force, he just needs someone to train him how to become a Jedi." Ki-gon said to the council, which was met with a moment of silence. A Padawan, you already have Ki-gon, Yoda said as he pointed his walking stick to the Jedi Knight and his apprentice and took a deep breath. Trained too, you cannot, Yoda finished as he looked at the Jedi Knight in the eyes. Obi-Wan is ready for the trials to become a Jedi Knight. I have taught him all I can, Qui-Gon said as he put hand on Obi-Wan's shoulder, causing Obi-Wan to become very proud that his master thought he was ready. I am ready for the trials, Obi-Wan stated to the council confidently, but was stopped by Mace Windu. You becoming a Jedi Knight will be discussed later, Padawan Kenobi. For now I must ask why Qui-Gon feels it so important that these two children become Jedi even if they are unusually strong in the Force. I have a feeling that one of them has the chance of being the chosen one, Qui-Gon said seriously, which caused the council around him to stare at him as though he had gone mad. You speak of the one from the prophecy, the one that will bring balance back to the Force, Mace said, making sure that he didn't misunderstand what Qui-Gon was talking about. Yes, was his only reply, which caused Yoda and Mace to think about it for a little bit before looking at each other and nodding. Bring them in one at a time, Mace started, only for Yoda to finish what he was saying for him. Test them we shall to see if what you say is true and see if we can sense what you sense, causing both Jedi to bow to the council and leave the room to tell Anakin and Naruto that they were going to be tested to see if they could become Jedi. Outside the council room, Naruto was wondering how Anakin was doing. I wonder what type of questions they'll ask me, Naruto thought to himself as he watched the door waiting for Anakin to come out, who insisted on going first. Well, I guess I'll just have to find out, Naruto thought as the door opened and out came Anakin with a thoughtful look on his face, but Naruto mistook it for worry, and as he walked by him he simply put his hand on his shoulder. Relax, I'm sure you did great, Anakin. We're going to be Jedi in no time, Naruto whispered into his ear before going inside. As he walked inside, Naruto could feel the eyes of the council bore into him as though they trying to see right through him. When Naruto stood in the middle of the room he felt slightly uncomfortable because of how some were staring at him as though he shouldn't be there. Those stares. They're the same stares that I got from the villagers. Is it because I'm older and have knowledge of the Force that wasn't learned here? Naruto thought as he looked at a few of the Jedi around the room. So Naruto Jedi, you want to be him? Asked Yoda, who now had the blonde's full attention. Yes, I would, but if you don't mind, what's your name since you clearly know mine? Naruto asked, since he felt as though he was at a disadvantage here. Yoda is my name. Old you are, but told we have been that knowledge of the Force you have taught yourself, Yoda said, never moving his eyes from Naruto. Came the intelligent reply from Naruto, who immediately berated himself mentally for sounding so stupid in front of the people who controlled his chances of becoming a Jedi. Show us, could you? Yes? Yoda asked Naruto, waiting to see what he could do. Deciding to answer his question with actions rather than words, Naruto concentrated and made a shadow clone without saying anything. He was extremely proud of this feat since it was extremely useful, and Naruto only had to say the name now if he was going to make a huge amount of clones. Despite learning this, Naruto had still not gotten the trick to making a Rasengan by himself and still required the help of a clone, which bothered him to almost no end. Not really caring about that for right now, though, Naruto watched as a Rasengan began to form into his hands with the help of his clone. Once done, no longer needing the clone anymore, he dispersed it but decided against destroying the room with the Rasengan in his hand since the room looked nice and he didn't want to be blamed for the damage. I don't want to mess up your room, Naruto said as he let the ball of condensed force energy disperse into nothing. Interesting, you are Naruto, interesting indeed. You have no fear but instead a heart pure with no darkness that we can see, Yoda said as he closed his eyes, thinking carefully, wondering what he should do about this situation. Bring the others in, Mace Windu said as the whole council was trying to reach out to the Force to find out what they should do. Once everyone was inside, they stood in the middle of the council. Qui-Gon was the first to speak. So you have tested them, will they become Jedi? He asked. No, the young boy will not. The Force is very clouded around him, but as for Naruto, we have yet to come to a decision, Master Windu said, which surprised Qui-Gon since he had thought it would be the other way around, but he was determined that they both become Jedi. Surely you can see that one of them is the chosen one, they must become Jedi, Qui-Gon pleaded with the council, but all he got was silence. If it helps, Anakin is the chosen one. I can practically guarantee that I'm not this one that will bring back the balance to the Force. Yes, I'm unique when it comes to the Force, but that's where it stops, so if you're planning to make me a Jedi then please reconsider Anakin as well. Naruto said, surprising the whole council. We will continue this matter some other time, but for now Ki-Gon, you and your Padawan must continue to protect the Queen. I sense that she will be trying to leave soon back to her planet, Mace Windu said, and then watched all of them bow and leave the room. I would like to speak with Master Yoda alone, so if you would? Windu asked the rest of the council, who simply nodded and left the room one by one. Once they were all out, he turned to Yoda. What do you think about this? Qui-Gon claims that one of them is the chosen one, but one of the two claims that the other, the little boy, is the chosen one. I don't see how this could be, Master Yoda. Mace Windu asked the man who had lived much longer than him and was wiser than him. Clouded is the Force. The answers that we seek are much clouded. Reason there is for Naruto not wanting to be the chosen one, and only time will tell if we make the right decision on the two becoming Jedi. The aged Jedi Master replied, who simply nodded, agreeing with what he said. Only time will tell, they both thought. Naruto was waiting by the ship on the landing platform with the others when he saw Padme decked out in her queen outfit, interesting her eyes. There's a certain fire in them. Hey man, would I hate to be Viceroy right now. Naruto thought as he let a smile grow on his face as he made his way to Padme. Your Majesty, it our honor to continue to serve and protect you, Naruto heard Qui-Gon say, who was closer to her than him currently. I welcome your help. Senator Palpatine fears that the Federation means to destroy me, Padme said in her queen voice as she continued her path toward the ship. Hey over my dead body, Naruto said as he walked beside Padme, and unless the Federation has figured out a way to kill 1,000 of me, then I don't see there being a problem, Naruto confidently finished as they walked up the ramp and into the chrome ship. Later on the way to Naboo. As soon as we land, the Federation will arrest you and force you to sign the treaty, Panaka said, not understanding his queen's motives to do what she was doing. I agree. I'm not sure what you intend to accomplish by this, Qui-Gon concluded, not sure of the reasoning behind these actions himself. I will take back what is ours, Padme said, making her intentions clear to everyone in the room. I can only protect you, not fight a war for you, Qui-Gon quickly said, worried that his presence here might have influenced the situation. We also don't have an arm, Panaka was saying, but was cut off by Naruto's coughing. Actually you do, I'm Rei. But Naruto was cut off this time. It was Padme? Naruto is right, we might be able to get one since I was told by Jar Jar Binks that the Gungans have a grand army. Padme said, quickly receiving a confused look from Naruto since that wasn't where he was going with this at all. He was actually going to suggest that he be a diversion while the others sneak in. Very well, all that leaves us is getting in contact with Gungans, which Jar Jar will help with now. If you do not mind, I would like everyone to leave while I change, Padme said as the others filed out one by one until only Naruto and Padme were left. You know Naruto, when I say I'm going to change, I meant I was going to change, Padme said as she smiled at our young blonde, but he wasn't in a mood for her teasing right now. Padme, what are you doing? There is no reason to involve the Gungan people when I can solve this problem by myself, Naruto said, wanting an answer for her actions, which was exactly what he got. What I'm doing is making sure you don't get yourself killed, Naruto. I know that you think you can do this all on your own, but you're wrong, you're not strong enough yet, so please don't fight me on this, Padme pleaded as fountain popped out of the nearby wall and she washed all of the makeup off her face. Now to some these words might not have affected them that much, but for Naruto it felt like someone had just punched him in the stomach and he couldn't breathe as he saw a brief image of Padme having a red lightsaber through her. Not strong enough was all Naruto could think as he shut his eyes and made fists out of anger. You're right, Padme, I'm not strong enough, which makes this even harder to say, Naruto said as he opened his eyes to see Padme come out from behind her chair dressed in clothes similar to what her handmaiden would be wearing when they reached Naboo, and asked the Gungans for help. What is it? Padme asked, since Naruto looked like he was going through some sort of pain, but not from any physical injury, it was more like he was beating himself up mentally. Padme, I going to become a Jedi. I already talked to the council and they have yet to make a decision, but I think I have a good chance, Naruto said, looking anywhere but at her, which was starting to scare Padme. Naruto, I don't understand, we've talked about this, right? You are going to find your own Jedi way and not forget about me, right? Padme asked, but towards the end it was more like she was asking herself than Naruto. Padme, you know I can never forget about you, but until I feel I'm strong enough I think it would be best if we distance ourselves from each other. Naruto said, finally looking up, but what he saw broke his heart. Padme was leaning on her chair for support, crying. Wanting to get her to stop crying, Naruto slowly made his way up to her but was stopped when he felt a stinging on the right side of his cheek. It took a few seconds for him to realize that she had slapped him. "Don't, Naruto, you'll only make it worse, just don't," said Padme as she wiped away the tears. "Please leave, Naruto," she said, looking down at the ground. But Naruto was cut by a glare from Padme. "I said leave." "Okay," was all Naruto said before turning around and walking out the doorway and going to another room where he stayed. "I didn't think it would be this hard letting her go, but if this is what I have to do, get stronger and save her from that person. As long as she survives, it's okay if she hates me," Naruto thought as he laid down, hoping to get some shut-eye for before they landed on Naboo, but Naruto doubted that it would happen. Naboo. Naruto was sitting on his bed staring at the wall when they landed on Naboo. Getting off the ship, they went to where the Gungans' underwater village was, but they weren't there, so Jar Jar led them to where their most sacred place was. Luckily for them, this time they found them, and through some talking where Padme revealed herself to be the true queen disguised as one of her handmaidens and that the other was just a decoy, they were able to convince the leader of the Gungans to join them in their battle against the Federation. Creating a plan that would use the Gungan battle as a diversion, the others would sneak in and capture the Viceroy. With everything going according to plan, they infiltrated the airbase hangar and quickly took out any droids inside, with Naruto destroying any that got anywhere close to him or Padme with Rasengans, and both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan taking out any that survived Naruto, which weren't that many, with their lightsabers. He seems a little different today, Qui-Gon thought as he watched Naruto tear through the droids. "Naruto, is there anything wrong?" Obi-Wan asked since he noticed a change in the way Naruto was fighting. "No, I just want these droids off this planet," Naruto said in a serious voice that didn't match his usual demeanor as he let the Rasengans and any remaining clones in the area disperse. Qui-Gon nodded, feeling that if Naruto wanted to tell them more, then he would when he felt ready. Quickly ordering Anakin to stay hidden in a cockpit, they turned to the door, which slowly opened to reveal the Sith Darth Maul. "Oh great, you again," Naruto said sarcastically as he got into a fighting position. "I thought I told you not to mess with me the last time I kicked your ass," Naruto taunted the Sith, but the only response he got was a glare that promised pain if he ever got his hands on Naruto. "Naruto, he is not your opponent, we'll handle this, besides the Queen could use your help," Qui-Gon said as he looked over and saw that Padme and the others were being held up by 3 droidekas. "Fine, but the both of you better not die," Naruto said before he leapt on the wall above the droidekas and jumped down behind it, entering its shield. Naruto inkazed his hand in the force and punched a hole right through one of the droidekas before moving on to the next one. Entering the next one shield, Naruto did the same thing before it could turn around to shoot him, but the third one was prepared and began firing as Naruto ran across the room, jumping on top of a box and jumped into the air above the droideka. Creating a shadow clone while in the air, Naruto prepared a Rasengan as he dived down towards the last droideka. "Let's see which is stronger, your shield or my Rasengan," Naruto shouted as the blue orb and the shield clashed for a little bit before the shield gave out and Naruto used the momentum to just completely rip through the last droideka. "Let's go," Padme yelled at her soldiers after seeing Naruto take care of the droidekas by himself. Naruto followed right behind them as they went through the back entrance, but before completely leaving the room, Naruto spared a look back inside to see the master and the apprentice still battling the Sith in the middle of the hangar. Maybe he could get back in time to help them, but for right now he needed to concentrate on protecting Padme since this was a battlefield, and while he was sure she could take care of herself, he wasn't going to take any chances. Strangely, they were finding very little resistance until they were ambushed by multiple droids who flooded the hallway that they were in. "Crap, for every droid I destroyed 2 more take their place," Naruto yelled at himself as he was currently summoning clone after clone to counter-effect the amount of droids. Not seeing an end to this anytime soon, Naruto looked back to see Padme and the other using grapples get to the floor above them. "Hey, she always thinks of something," Naruto thought, summoned more clones and transformed them to look like Padme and the others while he jumped out the nearest window and wall, climbed to try and catch up with Padme, but when he did, he noticed he was too late. "Crap," Naruto thought as he tried to assess the situation from above where Padme and the others were being held captive by Viceroy and multiple droids. "I guess the slug isn't as stupid as he looks." Sure, I could just jump down, save Padme and kill everyone, but there is a chance that the others will get caught in the crossfire and I can't save them all with so many droidekas, Naruto thought as he was thinking of everything he could do when he looked down the hallway and saw something that made him smile and almost laugh. There, running down the hallway, was Padme's decoy, who had now gotten the attention of Viceroy and all the other droids off Padme as she passed the guns hidden in her chair to the others. "No offense, but you really are stupid," Naruto said as he looked at the Viceroy and jumped to the ground and let out a sigh at how easily they were tricked and trapped as Padme ordered the soldiers to lock down the doors. "Naruto, go and help the Jedi," Padme said, not looking at Naruto, who just let out another sigh when looked at the doors which were now locked down and then to the window. "Oh well, I always did want to do this," Naruto yelled as he jumped out the window. Landing on the ground, Naruto made his way back to the hangar, briefly noticing that Anakin's ship wasn't there anymore before following the track of lightsaber slashes on the floor and on the walls, which ended up leading him to a strange room, but at the end of it he could see Qui-Gon fighting the Sith by himself as Obi-Wan ran behind them trying to catch up. Not wanting to be left out, Naruto also ran over to where they were to get into the fight but was stopped these red shields that now separated himself, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and the Sith into their own different section. "Obi-Wan, what is happening?" Naruto yelled, getting the Padawan's attention. "These ray fields seem to run on a timer. If we're fast enough we can beat them and try to help Qui-Gon," Obi-Wan replied as he turned around, reigniting his lightsaber and sprinted down the pathway. He but didn't make it in time as the last ray field went up, stopping him from helping his master. Looking back, he saw Naruto was only 2 sections back, so when they went down again he would have enough time to run and help them fight Darth Maul, but that thought was dashed away as he looked back to the fight and saw his master begin to tire until he slipped up and was stabbed through the stomach and fell to the ground. "No!" Obi-Wan yelled at the top of lungs as he watched his master get stabbed. Obi-Wan, while angry, was still mindful enough of the Force that he did not forget about Naruto, who he could also feel was furious at seeing Qui-Gon get killed. Once the ray shield went down, Obi-Wan sprang into action, immediately going on the offensive, slashing and jumping, basically doing everything in his power to avenge his master. Meanwhile, Naruto's body simply moved on its own as he ran over to Qui-Gon to check on him, and much to his relief he could feel Qui-Gon's faint breathing. "Qui-Gon, hang in there, Obi-Wan is going to kill the Sith and I'm going to get you some help," Naruto said as he was getting ready to pick him up, but he was stopped when Qui-Gon simply shook his head. No, you must help Obi-Wan. He can't do it himself. You have to help him," Qui-Gon said weakly as he handed his lightsaber to Naruto, who firmly grabbed it in his right hand before gently letting Qui-Gon down on the ground again and turned his head back to the fight. He was greeted with sight of Obi-Wan slashing Darth Maul's dual-bladed lightsaber in half and Obi-Wan forcing him to the ground. "That's the way to do, Obi-Wan, and now it's my turn," Naruto thought furiously as he ignited the green lightsaber in his hand and jumped towards the downed Sith, but to Naruto's annoyance he was pushed back into the wall. "Have to learn how to do that," Naruto told himself as he got up from the ground to see Darth Maul begin his counterattack and finally push Obi-Wan off the ledge, but luckily he hung on to something sticking out of the wall before he fell to his death. Running to his aid, Naruto attacking the Darth Maul, but this time he created 3 clones to assist him in fighting. Unfortunately, Naruto's short time with a lightsaber in his hand showed as Darth Maul picked through the clones and their sloppy slashes that were aimed towards him. "Give up, you can't win," Maul snarled as he forced Naruto to the ground. "You're pathetic," Maul said as he grinned evilly, but then screamed in pain to see his left hand cut off by a green lightsaber. "How?" he yelled, looking back at the Naruto in front of him, who disappeared. "I knew that I couldn't beat you in a stand-up fight, so I tricked you," Naruto stated simply as he kept his lightsaber level, his instinct telling him that Maul wouldn't just quit like that, and his instinct was proven correct when Maul tried a vertical strike at him with his one arm holding the lightsaber, but the strike never came down as Obi-Wan flipped above them, grabbing his lightsaber in midair while turning around and delivering a horizontal sweeping stroke with his lightsaber across Darth Maul's waistline when he landed. Both Obi-Wan and Naruto watched as Darth Maul's body fell down the hole and split into 2 due to Obi-Wan's last attack before they both turned off their lightsaber and rushed over to Qui-Gon's side. "It's too late," Qui-Gon muttered as they reached them. "No," Obi-Wan said back, refusing to believe it as he shook his head and tried to pick his master up while Naruto looked down and knew what Qui-Gon was saying was right. It was as though he could feel his life dwindling away. "Obi-Wan, promise promise me that you will train the boy, and that Naruto will receive training as well." "Yes, master," Obi-Wan answered, knowing very well that he would be fulfilling his dying master's last request. "Naruto, you or the boy are the chosen one. That will bring balance to the Force." Ki-gon slowly closed his eyes as he finished his last words, but as he was closing them the surroundings turned completely white for him, with Obi-Wan's radiating the color blue. But what surprised him was Naruto was flowing with a certain gold energy that made him look like the sun. "Naruto is the chosen one," was Ki-gon's last thought before he closed his eyes forever. Naruto simply looked down in silence before turning and leaving, deciding to give Obi-Wan time to mourn his master's passing. Sometime later, it wasn't long before a ship holding the newly elected Supreme Chancellor and the rest of the Jedi Council landed, ready to take Viceroy away to the Senate and to of course hold Ki-gon's funeral, which Naruto was glad that they were having, considering that if it wasn't for Ki-gon then they might have all died. After some talking between Padme and Chancellor Palpatine, which Naruto for some reason felt uneasy about, as though something was telling him to get her as far away as possible from him, Naruto noticed Master Yoda walking inside with Obi-Wan. Curiosity getting the better of him, Naruto decided to follow them as discreetly as he could, which for him meant as they were talking inside a room, Naruto was standing on the wall outside listening in. From what Naruto could hear, the Jedi Council had promoted Obi-Wan to the level of Jedi Knight, but Yoda did not agree with the decision on training Anakin, which Obi-Wan was currently fighting for his right to train the boy. Naruto was a little worried until he heard Yoda say that the council agreed and that Anakin was to be trained by Obi-Wan. Almost forgetting that he was supposed to be quiet, Naruto was about to yell before he clamped his hands over his mouth. "Yes." Naruto thought happily. He leaned back in to hear them talk again, but to his surprise he found himself being lifted in the air by nothing and being brought into the room by Yoda, who had one hand in the air before dropping it and letting Naruto fall on his butt. "Not as quiet as you think him," Yoda stated, looking at Naruto, who looked away sheepishly at being caught. "Sorry Master Yoda, it is just that my curiosity got the better of me and I also wanted to return this to Obi-Wan," Naruto said as he scratched his head and brought out Ki-gon's lightsaber, but to his confusion Obi-Wan simply shook his head. "What do you don't you want his lightsaber?" Naruto asked. "Naruto, you forget that Ki-gon gave it to you and that he also believed that you could be the chosen one. I think that you could honor his memory if you held on to it as you became a Jedi," Obi-Wan said as smiled at Naruto couldn't believe what he was saying. "So does this mean that you guys decided on me being a Jedi?" Naruto asked, turning around to Yoda, who chuckled at the boy's enthusiasm. "Yes, made their decision in making you a Jedi, the council has," Yoda replied, keeping the boy in anticipation as he didn't say what their decision was. Naruto noticed this though and fell over on his back at the answer he was given. "Just tell me what the decision was," Naruto begged as he threw his arms up in the air, which caused Yoda to laugh in amusement. "Become a Jedi, you will," Yoda said finally, which caused the young blonde to jump in excitement before he stopped to look down at Yoda and ask him who his Jedi Master was going to be. "Your Jedi Master, will I be?" Yoda said as he pointed his walking stick at Naruto, gaining surprised looks from both Obi-Wan and Naruto, but Naruto quickly overcame his surprise and started saying how awesome it would be until Yoda jumped up, whacked him on the head with his stick, effectively quieting our blonde hero. It wasn't too long before Obi-Wan overcame his surprise at Yoda taking on another student that started to laugh at the antics of the newly formed Master and Padawan. At Ki-gon's funeral. In a small building, Ki-gon's funeral was being held with only the Jedi Council and a few others from Naboo like Padme, who was dressed beautifully. The only one excluded was Chancellor Palpatine because Naruto was adamant that he not be allowed in, so he gave the Chancellor the wrong location since for some reason something seemed off with him to Naruto. Padme though, as she looked at where Naruto was, looked like she was about to cry because while Naruto had not known Ki-gon for long, she knew that Naruto was able to become close to others very quickly, and when she looked at him she knew that he was hurting inside, and even though they left on a sour note did not mean that she did not care for him anymore. She was just mad at him at the time, so she made up her mind to cheer him up later. Once the funeral was finished, Naruto left without talking to anyone to a place where he liked to clear his head. Naruto liked the spot because it was underneath a tree on top of a hill that overlooked a valley on one side and the water on the other. With Naruto all distracted on his way here, he failed to notice Padme, who followed him and was now hiding behind the tree. "Man, did I mess up, Padme?" Naruto said out loud, still thinking that no one could hear him. As he said this, he was thinking about how angry she was at him when they last talked and how that slap had felt across his face. I wish I could tell you the truth, but I just don't know how to say it, Naruto said out loud as he looked at the stars in the nighttime sky, not expecting an answer. Why don't you try saying it? Naruto heard Padme's voice, causing him turn around to see Padme looking beautiful as ever with her hair down and without any of her queen makeup, just her looking beautiful by herself. Padme, I didn't know you were there, Naruto said as tried to look anywhere except for at Padme, but no matter how hard he tried he ended up looking into her eyes and he gave in. Fine, if you come here and then I'll try to tell you, he said while patting the ground next to him for her to sit. So tell me, what don't you know how to say? Padme said in a tone that said she wanted nothing but the truth and Naruto was going to give it to her. I had a vision, Padme, that if I don't get strong enough before 10 years are over, then I won't be able to save you from some man killing you, and I can't, no, I won't let that happen, Naruto said as he looked at the ground in front of his feet. Naruto, why didn't you tell me that? You made me think that you didn't want to know me or like I wasn't important to you anymore. I can understand that you want to get stronger to protect me, but I don't want to be away from you for 10 years. Padme replied, feeling as though she understood that Naruto thought he needed to protect her from what he saw no matter what. So I think that after 4 years of your training that we should meet and talk, because by then I will have finished my term as queen, okay? Padme asked Naruto, who could only smile at how understanding Padme was being right then. Yeah, that sounds great, Padme, I can't wait, Naruto said as he laid down on the grass and smiled at the fact that she was no longer mad at him and understood why he needed to become a Jedi and become stronger. Yes, well, that's 4 years from now, but tonight I just want to lie down next to you, okay? Padme said, not waiting for an answer, grabbed his arm and lied down next to him. I feel so safe, so peaceful, Padme thought as she slowly fell asleep next to Naruto while holding his arm. The next day Padme woke up lying on her bed by herself, or at least she thought she was by herself, until she heard Naruto's voice. Rise and shine, sleeping beauty, he yelled as loud as he could. Don't you know not to be so loud while waking someone up? Padme groaned as she threw a pillow at Naruto and grabbed another pillow put over her head so she could go back to sleep. Only it was not to be as Naruto grabbed her feet and dragged her out of bed and put her in front of her wardrobe. Oh, don't be like that, Padme, the festival of peace between you and the Gungans is today, Naruto said excitedly. Unfortunately, his excitement wasn't well shared by the tired queen. Hey Naruto. Yeah, Naruto answered, thinking that Padme was finally getting in the spirit of things. Get out of my room so I can change, Padme yelled at the blonde, who sheepishly scratched the back of his head before saying he was just a clone that was left behind, and he sort of forgot how to dispel himself, which caused a mischievous grin to spread across Padme's face. With real Naruto. Naruto was waiting for the festival to start as he was standing next to Yoda in his new Jedi attire when he winced in pain from receiving a clone's memory of Padme kicking him where the sun don't shine. HMPH, first of all, that was a cheap shot, and second of all, how the hell does a cone just forget to dispel? Naruto thought, annoyed as the festival was about to start, as he could see the Gungans on the other side begin to line up in formation with the boss out in front. After some time, Padme came out with a glowing orb that resembled peace, and when the Gungans' boss reached them, he took and held it up while everyone yelled the same thing. Peace. It had been 4 years since Naruto was accepted to be a Jedi and had started his training under Master Yoda, but that also meant it had been 4 years since he had seen Padme, and while he may have heard little things about her here and there, his training kept focus on the task at hand, which was becoming stronger by becoming closer to the Force. It was morning as Naruto woke up from his bed and went through his morning routine, which consisted of taking a shower, brushing his teeth, and changing into his Jedi robes. Sitting down on his bed, Naruto put on his boots as he remembered the events of the day before. Naruto had just finished his meditating and was currently training with his clones in large numbers when he was stopped by Yoda, who had just entered the room. Is there something wrong, Master? Naruto asked, since this was technically his downtime since he had already practiced with Yoda earlier in the day. Yoda simply shook his head. Why so eager to train are you, Naruto, when we have already trained earlier? Yoda asked his apprentice, who he had learned had amazing potential, which Yoda did his best to bring out in the past 4 years. I'm sorry, Master, I should have gone to rest like you suggested, but I just couldn't. I tried meditating, but something told me that I should practice more, Naruto explained as he dispelled all of his clones, gaining their memory, which Yoda and Naruto had also taken advantage of in his training. Very interesting. You have shown great potential. Naruto watched you closely in our recent assignments together. I have. Yoda said as he pointed a finger at Naruto. I'm sorry Master Yoda, but I don't understand the point of you telling me this, Naruto asked, confused since he had noticed Yoda keeping a closer eye on him, especially when they went on out to solve problems as peacekeepers. My point is recommended that you become a Jedi Knight. I have your trials begin tomorrow, Yoda said as he tapped his stick on the floor, causing Naruto to go into a moment of shock. Master, I don't know what to say. Do you really think I'm ready to take the trials? Naruto asked his master, only for him to chuckle as he reassured his apprentice that he needed to only remember what he had learned in the past few years. Alright then, I won't let you down master, Naruto yelled as he tacked the little green Jedi master in a hug and then ran off to his room, saying that he needed to get some rest for tomorrow. Back to the present moment, Naruto was staring at the wall, remembering the moment when he heard a knock at the door. I'll be there in a second. Naruto yelled as he quickly put on his boots, tied his leaf headband under his sleeve, and made his way to the door. On his way, Naruto looked at his image on a mirror that he had in his room and noticed that not much had changed in his appearance. His hair was bit more longer, but it still had that spiked look that the blonde liked. In fact, the only thing that had majorly changed was that he was now 5 feet and 6 inches tall now. Looking away from the mirror, Naruto turned to the door to see a grinning Obi-Wan Kenobi. About time. I thought you were going to keep waiting all morning, Obi-Wan said, causing Naruto to chuckle at his friend. What are you doing here, Obi-Wan? And where is Anakin? Naruto asked as he looked down the hallway to see nobody. Obi-Wan meanwhile only gave a frustrated sigh when Naruto asked about his Padawan. He said that he needed to practice his flying, otherwise he would get rusty, which doesn't make sense since he already practices flying all the time. But as for me, I'm here to make sure you're not late for your trials. After all, this is a big moment. 4 years and you're already on your way to becoming a Jedi Knight. Obi-Wan exclaimed as he shook Naruto, who could only scratch his head in embarrassment from all the attention he was getting from his friend. It's not a big deal really, Naruto said, trying to convince Obi-Wan on the way, but he wasn't having it, so the entire way there Obi-Wan messing with Naruto by calling him a prodigy. Once at the main training ground at the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan and Naruto saw Yoda standing in the middle of it, so they made their way towards him. So who do you think you're going to fight? Obi-Wan asked, which got him a surprised look from Naruto. What do you mean fight? Naruto asked, confused, crossing his arms. Wait, you don't know? Well, one of the tests is combat. They're going to put you up against someone to see if you have the skills to become a Jedi Knight, and with you being so young and the possibility of you being the chosen one, I'm sure they don't plan to go easy on you, Obi-Wan said as he pointed up to the balcony above them where the Jedi Council stood ready to watch Naruto's every move. He isn't kidding, Naruto thought as he looked back down to see a smiling Yoda, which gave him confidence in his abilities again. So Naruto, are you ready to see who you will fight? Yoda asked, to receive a confident nod from Naruto and support from Obi-Wan, who said he was 100% sure Naruto could do this. Naruto's confidence was at an all-time high until he saw Mace Windu jump down from the balcony. Very well, I expect you to your best, Windu said as he stared Naruto down. Make that 60% sure, Obi-Wan said, knowing that it was no secret that Mace Windu was a great fighter, and with that he and Yoda left the floor and jumped to the balcony so as to not get in the way of the fighters. This is good. I guess I wouldn't want it to be easy for me after all, Naruto said as he ignited his green lightsaber, with Windu doing the same except his lightsaber was purple. Naruto was the one to start things off by jumping backwards in the air and creating 20 clones who rushed Jedi Master, but he wasn't Master for nothing as he skillfully blocked and dodged most of the attacks before rolling away and force pushing the clones into a wall where he proceeded to cut them down before they could all get back up. Only 5 clones managed to make it up and surround Mace Windu, who smirked as one of the clones lunged at him, but he ducked under it, stabbing the clone with his purple lightsaber and then severed another clone's arm that tried to take Windu by surprise. With only 3 of them left, they started to get a little worried as Windu jumped over them, decapitating one of their heads in the process and then landing and throwing his lightsaber, effectively cutting down the last 2 shadow clones. Back up on the balcony, there was murmuring between council members who were watching the fight as they all saw the original Naruto sitting down in a meditative position with his eyes closed while Mace took on all of his clones. Master Yoda, perhaps we should stop the fight. After all, Master Windu just took out 20 of his clones, Obi-Wan said, worried for Naruto's safety at the moment. Have more faith in Naruto's abilities, you must, because the fight has just started, Yoda said as he pointed back down to where Naruto had finally opened his eyes and was getting up from his seated position. Ah, that was a nice warm-up, wouldn't you say? Naruto asked as he once again ignited his green lightsaber. Yes, now let's see if the original can do better, Mace said as he moved in, making the first move, this time with Naruto blocking it and pushing the bald Jedi Master back. I guess the original is better. And with that, flurry of slashes erupted from the Jedi Master, with Naruto more or less blocking them all. Naruto was finally able to counter-attack when he felt Mace make a mistake and kicked him in the chest, sending him back, giving Naruto more than enough time to launch his own attack, which consisted of continuous movement with unrelenting attacks, giving Mace Windu no time to counterattack. For a while it seemed as though Naruto had him on the ropes until they met in stalemate in the middle, and it was now a battle of wills as Naruto ferociously fought against him, forcing Windu to use the force to push him back, but Naruto was ready as he also tried to force push him back. Neither side wanted to give any ground to the other side, but eventually one side did, and it was Mace who was sent flying and was barely able to get up in time to dodge Naruto, who was in the air with a Rasengan that was as big as him. Giant Rasengan. Naruto yelled as the attack caused a huge explosion when it hit the ground. When the dust cleared, Mace Windu was feeling somewhat tired as he looked for Naruto but couldn't see him, so he immediately turned around expecting Naruto to try and get his back, but once he turned around, Naruto released his transformation that made him look like a piece of rubble from the explosion and rushed behind him holding his lightsaber right next to his neck. "It's over," Naruto stated in a serious voice as Mace nodded and turned his lightsaber off, showing that he gave up, giving Naruto the victory. After the Jedi Council had made their decision, Naruto was called inside the council room, which was why he was standing in the middle of the room right now. "Naruto, you have proven yourself to be quite strong in the Force and versatile in combat, if what we saw is any proof of that," started Ki-Adi-Mundi stated, breaking the sentence, letting the another of the council continue off what he was saying, and this time it was Shakti. "But from what we have heard, you have yet to ever take a long assignment by yourself, which is why we the council feel it is necessary for you to do this before giving you the rank of Jedi Knight." She continued, waiting to see how Naruto would respond, and to the council's pleasure Naruto simply nodded, since he agreed that he had indeed never taken a long assignment by himself, and that every assignment he was sent on was either short or he was sent with Yoda, who could oversee things in case it went wrong. "I understand, masters, but if I may ask, when can I start on this long-term assignment?" Naruto asked as he looked back at the Jedi Masters, who gave him nods of respect that Naruto had been so calm and seen their reasoning for their decision. "Luckily for you, Jedi assistance has been requested by the new Queen of Naboo. She wants a bodyguard for their new senator while she gets into the swing of things of being a senator, since there have been some death threats pointed at her by some people who thought she shouldn't be senator," Mace explained as he sat forward in his chair and noticed the slight movement in how Naruto was standing when he mentioned Naboo. "That won't be problem for you, Naruto, will it?" Mace asked as he looked Naruto in the eyes, which slightly unnerved the blonde on the inside, but Naruto refused to show it. "Not at all, I'm just curious as to who I will be guarding and for how long I will be there," Naruto asked, because in truth this answered his problem of how he was going to meet Padme after all these years of not seeing her. Now he just needed to find her when he got to Naboo. "We were not given the name of the senator, only that she will be waiting for you when you land, and as for how long you will be there, given the amount of threats she has received, we have decided that it would be best that you stay there for 1 year to make sure that none of these threats occur," Mace said, to which the other masters in the room nodded in agreement. "Alright, when do I start?" Naruto asked as he looked toward Yoda, who simply smiled, and no sooner than half an hour did Naruto find himself in the hangar where his Jedi starfighter was waiting for him, which was black and gold, but what also made his fighter special was that there was an extra space for a passenger in the back. While he was saddened at the fact that he would have to leave the place he had started thinking of as a home, he was also happy that he would get to return to Naboo and see Padme, but other than that Naruto was also happy that his co-pilot would be his longtime friend R2-D2. "You know, I was worried that you wouldn't make it," Naruto said to his little droid, who was being lifted up and being put into Naruto's starfighter. Not getting a response from his friend at first, Naruto checked his batteries but found that they were full. "Wait a second, you're not still mad about that incident, are you?" Naruto asked, and in return he got several beeps from the astromech that made it sound like it was telling Naruto off. "Hey, how was I supposed to know that they would shoot back? I still say that I never saw any guns shoot out of those meteors, besides I was just trying to get some target practice in." Naruto tried defending himself, but R2-D2 was hearing none of it as it told Naruto to get in the ship or he was leaving without him, to which Naruto just sighed and hopped in. Stupid R2 doesn't know how to let something go, Naruto thought as his starfighter left the atmosphere of the planet. Once in space, Naruto found his hyperspace ring and put in the coordinates for Naboo and jumped into hyperspace. After some time had passed, Naruto left hyperspace and was greeted with the sight of Naboo. It really is a wonderful place, Naruto thought as he moved closer to the planet and to where he was supposed to land to meet the new senator. I do hope we get along, whoever she is, Naruto said out loud as his ship was landing and he noticed some figures to the far right staying in the shade. Jumping out of the starfighter with R2 right behind him, Naruto made his way closer when he noticed that one of the people looked like what must have been the new queen of Naboo and the other looked like Padme from where he was standing. Wait, holy shit, that is Padme, what's she doing here? Naruto thought as he walked up to them and bowed to the queen and smiled toward Padme. Sorry to have kept you waiting. Me and R2 got into a disagreement, but we settled it on the way here, so where is the senator that I'm supposed to protect? Naruto asked the queen, only for Padme to step forward. The new senator is me, so you'll be protecting me just like old times, right? Padme said as she gave Naruto a smirk. My queen, I can take it from here, besides Naboo needs to get used to you being the new queen. Padme finished and led Naruto to her home. Naruto looked around and realized that he remembered where they were. Padme, do you still have your same house? Naruto asked, to which Padme nodded. Of course I still have it, after all I was the best queen of Naboo so far. But was cut off as she let out a yelp of surprise as Naruto grabbed her bridal style and started to pump the force into his legs as he jumped across building at a fast pace until they reached her house. There you go, we're here now, Naruto exclaimed as he let Padme down, who hid a blush that had formed across her face at being so close to Naruto as he was running and holding her at the same time. Yeah, well, just next time tell me when you're going to do that. And what about R2? Padme asked as she opened the door and went inside, but remaining within earshot. Oh, R2, I made a clone to carry him here, they'll be here soon, Naruto said as he quickly formed a shadow clone to go and get R2. Oh, that's nice. Anyways, why don't you get inside already so we can catch up? My droids have been making a meal that I know you'll love, Padme shouted back from the kitchen. Hearing this, Naruto rushed inside, telling himself it couldn't be, and yet there it was, 2 bowls of ramen, one for Naruto and one for Padme sitting at the table. Seeing this, Naruto almost cried tears of joy, since there had been no ramen at the Jedi Temple and it had been so long since he had eaten the food of the gods. Thank you, Padme, Naruto shouted and then dug into his bowl while Padme ate her much smaller bowl much slower than the young Jedi in front of her. So how was the Jedi Temple and training under Master Yoda? Padme asked when she had seen Naruto was finally finished with his food, and so Naruto informed her of all the things he had done at the Jedi Temple, which took some time since when he finished it was starting to get dark outside. Wow, that's amazing, Naruto, it sounds like you've gone through quite the amount of things. Everything's been basically the same here, except without you it's quieter and not as interesting, Padme said as she looked down at the ground only to hear Naruto laugh at what she was saying. You don't give yourself enough credit, Padme. I mean, you were the queen of an entire planet and now you're their senator. You mean a lot to the people here, Padme, and I don't know what they would do without you, Naruto said as he smiled, lifting her spirits up with what he said until he looked at the clock and saw that it was 11 and that he might get something over with. Padme, about these threats, what has been going on? Naruto questioned Padme as the Naruto in front of her had changed into a more mature version of himself as his voice grew more serious. It's nothing really, just letters from some cowards. I tried to reach out to them and solve it peacefully, but all I got in return were more angry letters, Padme said and then yawned as though it weren't a big deal and was just shrugging it off. Padme, you should go to sleep. I'll keep watch with my shadow cones, but before that I would like to read these letters, Naruto said, looked out at the darkening sky, and Padme simply nodded, figuring that Naruto was just worrying about her safety. So she went upstairs, grabbing the letters that she had kept and brought them downstairs before returning upstairs to go to sleep, locking her door. Naruto in the meantime had created enough shadow clones to surround the house while he sat down at the table and read the letters, and to say that he was getting worried was an understatement, since some of them were serious threats of what they would do to her if they ever got their hands on her. These people are insane, Naruto thought as he continued to read them, and then promised himself that he would always be with Padme even if she didn't take some of these threats seriously. So for the next 2 months that's exactly what Naruto did, never leaving Padme's side for a second even when she was doing her senator work, and for a little bit Naruto was thinking that the letters weren't serious threats since they had stopped coming and Naruto had not sensed anyone around her with bad intentions. But that all changed when one day they arrived at the house and they were followed by 2 speeders that stopped behind them. Naruto watched as several people got out of each speeder and all the people were wearing all black including masks except for one person who stood in front of the group wearing a black mask with a big red X going through it. "Leave now, our business is with the former queen," the man said as they all brought out rifles that were hidden behind their backs and pointed them at Naruto, trying to intimidate him. "Padme, go inside and hide, this could get dangerous," Naruto whispered to Padme, to which she nodded and ran toward the door when one of the men got brave and tried to shoot her in the back, but it was redirected into the ground courteous to Naruto now ignited green lightsaber, shocking the group that the former queen was under the protection of a Jedi. "You should all go now before this gets out of hand," Naruto stated as he created shadow clones in the surrounding area, giving Padme more than enough time and protection to get in the house, where once inside she ran to her room and grabbed her hidden pistol that she always kept in case of emergencies. Unfortunately they didn't listen as the one in charge ordered them to open fire on the young Jedi, which was exactly what they did, but to no avail as Naruto and his shadow clones managed to deflect all of the gunfire away from them until they ran out of ammo. Once out of ammo, Naruto used the force to push them back, making them lose their grips on their blaster rifles, which Naruto and his clones used this to their advantage as they rushed them and using their lightsabers managed to only cut in half each of their blaster rifles. With them no longer posing a threat, Naruto turned off his lightsaber and dispelled all of his clones. "If I were you I would take this chance to leave," Naruto said as he turned his back, only for a few seconds later to hear the sound of speeders and a voice of into the distance yell at him that this would not be the end. Going inside the house, Naruto slowly made his way up to Padme's door and opened it, only to have a pistol shoved in his face until Padme noticed that it was Naruto and she dropped it while apologizing to Naruto. "No need to say you're sorry, I probably should have knocked on the door," Naruto said, stopping her as he let out a sigh, still thinking of what the man said about this not being the end. "So what happened out there?" Padme asked as sat down on her bed, curious as to how the blonde had dealt with them since she had heard multiple blasters going off. "I destroyed their weapons and told them to leave," Naruto stated simply as he leaned on the wall looking at Padme. "But what worries me is that the leader of the group said that this wasn't the end, and I'm worried as to how far he intends to go with this. Also, I don't even know his reasoning for these attacks, it just doesn't make sense," Naruto said loudly as he took his eyes off Padme and looked the other way toward a window at the sky as if he would find an answer there. Seeing this, Padme was going through multiple ideas in her head to try and help Naruto when a light bulb went off in her head. "I know we could leave to Lake Country and let things cool down here," Padme voiced her thoughts. "What about your work?" Naruto asked, turning his head. "And how secluded is the place we would be going? After all, they could just follow us," Naruto continued, not all too sure about this plan. "Relax, Naruto, I'm done with all my work until I have to go to Coruscant. The stuff I'm doing here is just helping the new queen adjust to her role as queen, which she is, and getting used to my new role as senator, which will be easier once this whole threat on my life is over and I can go to the Senate," Padme said as she brought out a suitcase and started to load a bunch of clothes in it. "Also, the place we'll be staying at is really secluded, no one knows about it since it's just a small little island out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm sure that if you sent your clones out as a distraction then we could just sneak out without anyone following us," Padme concluded as she continued packing clothes into her suitcase until she stopped to look at Naruto. "So are you coming?" "Well, I wouldn't be much of a protector if I didn't come now, would I?" Naruto said as he smiled and helped her finish pack up as he sent a shadow clone to go pack his own clothes, which wouldn't be so difficult since he really just wore the exact same thing, just sometimes with the Jedi robe if he wanted to look extra awesome in his opinion. The next day they did exactly as planned as Naruto sent out 2 clones, one transformed as Padme and one normal clone, outside to where there would be a lot of people, getting the attention of everyone and also hopefully Padme's attackers. Meanwhile, the real Padme and Naruto had decided to leave R2 here with the house so that he could monitor the house and notify them if those people returned, while they sneaked off toward a small submarine that took them toward where they were going. Once there, Naruto climbed out and then turned back to help Padme out while also carrying the luggage via the Force. After they had put away everything, Naruto declared that he was going to be making dinner and that Padme just relaxed, to which she agreed to without putting up much of a fight, or rather any fight at all. While Naruto might not have liked cooking, he knew that he liked doing things to make Padme happy, so he painstakingly went through the same process of making her that same dinner he had when they had celebrated her birthday all those years ago. When he finished making the food, Naruto set the table and walked to Padme's room. "Padme, I'm done making the food," Naruto said loud enough for her to hear him, and after a few minutes the door was opened to reveal Padme wearing a beautiful black dress that hugged bodily very nicely, causing Naruto to stare at her for a few seconds before he realized what he ogling her and looked away. "Do you see something you like, Naruto?" Padme asked as she took a few steps closer to Naruto, invading his personal space so that there was only a couple inches between them. "You know, if you stare at me like that I might start thinking that you want something," she said as she had a big smile on her face before suddenly turning away and walking toward the dining room. "Of course I wouldn't really be opposed to something like that," she finished teasing the blonde as she walked further away, leaving Naruto standing there in a momentary sad of shock until he finally realized what had happened and began waking to the dining room as well. Once there, they enjoyed a wonderful meal while drinking some wine. Okay, lots of wine with some small talk in between, but Naruto could just not get it through his mind how beautiful she looked right now. After they were done eating, Naruto created some shadow cones to put the dishes away, while Padme led him outside, saying that she wanted to show him something. "You know, I used to come here when I was a little kid. My parents would bring me out here and I would swim in the water. I would always try to get to those islands over there but never make it, so my parents would have to drag me back in," Padme said as she laughed and pointed to an island into the distance. "Well, maybe we could try doing it together, and if it gets too tough I could just carry you while I walk us over there," Naruto said as he put his hand on the railing and looked at the huge puffy white clouds in the sky before looking back at Padme, who was now looking at the sun set under the ocean. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Padme asked as she continued to watch the sunset until it was about halfway while resting her chin on the palm of her hand. "Beautiful doesn't even begin to describe it," Naruto said quietly but loud enough for her to hear him as he continued to look at her, not really caring about the sun that was setting but instead was entranced by the woman that was right next to him. Feeling as though someone was watching her, Padme slowly turned away from the sun to see Naruto staring at her instead of the sun. "Why are you staring at me, Naruto?" Padme asked while smiling, but was taken back when without hesitation Naruto suddenly kissed her. At first Padme was taken by surprise, but after a second or two she kissed him back, causing Naruto to grab her waist and pull her closer to him, and with that their lips were interlocked as the sun set behind them. After a few seconds of making out they finally separated their lips with, "Sorry, just had to test something out," Naruto said as he took a deep breath of air due to the lack of breathing. "Don't apologize," Padme quickly said as she grabbed her shirt and pulled him in for another kiss, to which Naruto returned eagerly, but this time Naruto noticed that Padme had taken control as she was now leading him to her bedroom, and when they walked through the door she pushed him onto her bed and firmly shut the door behind her. "You have 10 seconds to take your clothes off before I rip them off," Padme said seductively as he was now shedding her clothes. "Padme, are you sure about this?" Naruto asked nervously, but that didn't stop him from taking off his Jedi robes off as fast as humanly possible. Once he was done and was left in the nude as he covered his private area with his hands as he looked up to see Padme left only in her black bra and panties, making it somewhat harder to cover his private area. "Naruto, I've never been more confident in anything I've done before," Padme said in a seductive voice as she pulled down her panties and then took off her bra. "The question is, do you want this?" Padme asked seductively as she slowly climbed on the bed, letting Naruto look at her body until she was practically on top of him while grabbing his hardening member. "Oh my god, he's huge," Padme thought. Yes, oh my god, I want this without a doubt," Naruto said, praying and hoping that this was not some amazing cruel dream that he was having. His answer was Padme whispering, "Good." Right before she kissed him, and with flip of the switch on the wall the lights went out for the night.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.